right, welcome to Raw Recovery, the community. Whether you're listening in on YouTube or Spotify, I just want to thank you for being with us today. I also want to thank my guests for coming and spending a little bit of time with us. They're going to be here talking about some things, but before I introduce them, I just want to briefly introduce the show and explain what we're here for. So, Raw Recovery, the community, right? We're here to speak about some hard-hitting topics, right? People are struggling from things of addiction, homelessness, trauma, abuse, neglect, abandonment issues, people who have been recently released from incarceration, people have family loss or loss of employment. All of these things affect us on a daily, but not too much talked about in an open space, in a space where we don't feel judged. But with that, we still need to talk about it in its rawest form. So we want to be making sure that we're talking about these topics, on having these conversations on a daily. So with that, I want to take the time to let our guests introduce themselves. So we'll start with you, Miss Sasha.
Hi, I'm Sasha. I'm a licensed social worker in New York. I've been in the field for about 10 years. Right now I'm doing pretrial work, but I also do groups and therapy on the side. This work for me just means everything. I'm a young Black woman. I'm from Boston, working in New York now, and I think that it means everything to have someone who looks like you doing the work. So for me, this work is very, very important.
Respect.
To have someone working with you, whether it's mental health, recovery, through all of these things that looks like you, that knows, where you're from, that understands. And especially being a social worker, I think, I'm not who they expect to see.
Right.
So.
Respect. How about you, Miss Gayle? Let's know about you a little bit.
Yes. So thank you, Sasha. And so my name is Gayle Parker Wright, and I'm similar to my cohort here. I'm a licensed clinical social worker and a practicing psychotherapist, but that's just not my niche. I've been in the field, although I look 21, I've been in the field for about 25 or 30 years,
Wow.
and I specialize in mental health and substance use disorder, focusing on Black and brown communities, but nevertheless can service anyone. Why I'm doing this? I ask myself that every day. I'm doing this because I think that from the lens of just being therapeutic, I think education is key. And when you know better, you do better.
Nice.
And so my goal is to educate individuals and in its rawest form.
Yes.
And that's why we're here with Raw Recovery.
Respect.
Thank
Thank you
you.
so much. And thank you for being here, ladies, on what is our first episode. So for being here, I want to give you your flowers for real. And just say thank you for,
Thank you so much.
taking your time to talk about what needs to be talked about. Because
Thank
again,
you.
so many people are suffering. And, I know some of you just got off of work and things like that and still took the time to come be here. So it's definitely appreciated.
Absolutely.
All right, so let's dive right in, right? The first episode is Addiction is a Disease. Let's talk about addiction. Let's talk about it. We could get started on some common myths, right? Some things that people assume about addiction just from what they have heard or seen, but don't really know the inner workings of how addiction works. So if we could just talk about a few things. So again, let's when talking about addiction from a medical standpoint, do we consider addiction as a disease? Will we classify addiction as a disease? Yes or no?
Yeah, I think we do.
Right? That's where we're at with it now. And I think that it's important to stress the fact that addiction is a disease, right? Because it helps people who may not be suffering from addiction personally, but witnessing other people suffer from it. They might be able to have like that empathetic view on it, the same way that you would empathize with a person who has cancer.
Correct.
Or empathize with a person who has diabetes, because you know it's a disease. You know it's something they have to battle daily and struggle to fight to survive. So let's talk about it. What are some misconceptions and myths about addiction that we could start breaking down?
So I think that when you talk about addiction, you it's not a morality issue or a willpower issue. It's about the community. Mm-hmm. It's about being compassionate. Mm-hmm. It's about understanding. When we talk about addiction, it's not just an issue where that's for them and not us. Mm-hmm. When we talk about addiction, we have to talk about culture. Mm. We have to talk about ethnicity. We have to talk about the disenfranchised and the inequalities mm-hmm. that come along with it. Mm-hmm. And I can make it as very simple. If you go to some very underserved communities, you see bodegas, you see Chinese restaurants, and you see a lot of liquor stores. Mm-hmm. And now the liquor stores are not just liquor stores, right? You go in, you can barely go in. They got the bulletproof glass. Mm-hmm. You got to point to things. But when you go to communities that don't look like us, you walk around these huge, oh, wait a minute. They don't call them liquor stores. Spirits.
Wines and spirits.
Yes. You know.
How fancy.
So, yeah. But they're just as impacted by addiction as we are. Right. Mm-hmm. But they have money. Right. Mm-hmm. So it shows up different.
Right. Yep. Very well said. Ms. Gayle, if you look on every corner, it's the liquor store and the check cashing place. Mm-hmm. You're going to get your check, cash it, and drink it away. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it's not the same in other communities. So very well said, Ms. Gayle. What do you
store,
think?
Smoke shop.
Right, right.
Yeah.
Have a good old time with your check that you just cashed. So what about people who think that addiction is a choice? Like you could just stop if you just wanted to. Like if you just tried hard enough, I'm sure you could. If you really just tried, I'm sure you could stop. What are your thoughts on that, Sasha?
It's ignorance. Mm. You know, it's ignorance. I mean, some of it could be trauma of maybe dealing with someone or, you know, having a family member, a parent, someone who grew up and you grew up watching them deal with addiction and thinking that, you know, they could stop this. If they loved me, they would stop this, you know, or certain things like that. Because I think that once you're educated and once you know what's going on, once you actually have the empathy for someone who's dealing with it and really take the time to learn more about it, you would know that it's not a choice, you know? And sometimes I think about what is that person going through? If you see someone, maybe you knew them before addiction, right? And they had a great life, you know, great family, great job, and then you saw them, you know, lose everything. You saw them go into a depression. You saw them lose everything. If you know that person, they wouldn't choose to do that, right? So I think that sometimes it's just the perspective and, you know, just taking the time and I get it, you know, like sometimes we see certain things and it's like, oh no, like, you know, I don't want to deal with that, or why are they doing that? Why would they do that? But it's like, you just never know.
You never know. Respect. As a person in recovery, even I used to, before I had my own struggles, I used to be like, just don't drink. You know, I used to say that even after I had been in the field, you know, for a good 5 years, I still had that mindset, but I hadn't been through my own struggle yet. So I was just as ignorant as the next person, like just maybe not just smoke crack today. Like, you know, like it's that easy. But again, if it were that easy, people would just do it, right? Like no one wakes up in the morning and say, man, I can't wait to become an alcoholic. I cannot wait to use heroin. No one ever wants that life. So I can attest to the fact that if they could get up out of it, they would.
And not only that, but I think it's just the understanding addiction and understanding what is addiction, right? Because every time we speak about addiction, we always allude to substances. But addiction can be food. Addiction can be shopping. Addiction can be eating. There's so many levels to addiction. And what happens is, you know, I'll give you a prime example. Anybody ever got a tooth pulled or, you know, or had a surgery, and sometimes they give you pain medications. And that pain medication, it makes that pain go away. So what do? You take more, right? And you take more. And so when someone becomes addicted, it's not that, oh, I just want to be overindulged. No, it's them wanting to feel better. And sometimes you may not be that person who, when you drink, it makes you feel better. But that's what addiction does. When I eat, it makes me feel better. You know, when I take that extra alcohol, it kills all that bad stuff. That stuff that I don't want to think about. That stuff that I don't want to go through. You know, and so when we think about addiction, we can't think about it from the lens of just stop. Because that pain doesn't go away. So if I stop, where am I going? Now what?
Right.
Who's going to replace that pain?
Right.
Who's going to take away that pain? And we can't define that pain for people because it looks different for everyone.
Right. You know, Ms. Gayle, I spoke to you in our private time previously about being prescribed a narcotic. I had a procedure and they prescribed me a narcotic. And unbeknownst to me, you know, it sent me. I didn't know it was a narcotic when they prescribed it to me, and it sent me down a 7-year addiction. And you know, of course, I wanted to stop, but I didn't even really know what was going on with me.
That's right.
You know, I didn't know that I was battling an addiction, especially not in the beginning. You know, I didn't. So I was prescribed a narcotic due to a procedure that I had, but I wasn't aware of the fact that the medication they were giving me was a narcotic. And as I was taking it, you know, it definitely made my body feel different. But I won't say that I felt a high, but it definitely made me sleep better. And so after taking it for so long, I started to struggle with sleeping. And that's when randomly I decided to take a shot. And I probably took about 2 or 3 shots, and that next morning I woke up so refreshed. I mean, it was the best sleep I had since being prescribed the narcotic. And I just remember like doing it again the next day because I wanted to sleep like that. And then after so long, your body just builds up a tolerance for the alcohol. And I began to suffer from insomnia, and it just, the alcohol wasn't even helping me sleep anymore. So,
but where is that challenge though? Because my question to you is, when you went to pick up that prescription, or when you did your follow up with the doctor, did no one stop and say, "Hey, you know what? This is what you're getting, and this is what you shouldn't do as a result of having this."
Right. And I'll tell you, when I actually knew I was prescribed a narcotic, when I came for the follow up, I was real itchy. I had a mole right here. I used to have a mole right here. Scratched it off. I was real itchy. And when I went into the doctor, they said, you know, how you doing? I was like, everything's fine. I feel good, except for I'm real itchy. And they were like, oh, that's probably from the narco we gave you. Immediately, I was like, narco? As in narcotic? Y'all gave me a narcotic? And that's when I realized what was happening to my body. But I didn't think that I was going to go through an addiction phase, like be like strung out or anything like that. I didn't expect it to get that deep.
And that wasn't enough information for you, though.
I'm inclined to agree. I'm inclined to agree. I've actually had conversations with some of my peers where I discussed about how I was prescribed a narcotic, and they immediately put the blame on me. Like, you know, you're responsible for, I will now. There will never be a time that a physician can give me any prescription that I won't, you know, fact check on my own. But at that young age of, I was about maybe 23, I'm an adult, and, you know, you're responsible for taking care of yourself. But I feel like those doctors, you know, they take an oath to protect us. And in some communities, some doctors are held as high as a priest. And I trusted my doctor.
Yeah, there's a level of trust there when they prescribe something to you.
Right? When my clients come to me for help, they know I'm going to give them my best. You know?
You're right.
And so that's what I expected from those doctors. Unfortunately, I could never give that type of trust to a doctor again. But yeah, I agree, Ms. Gayle. How do we start holding Big Pharma accountable?
Well, I think something that you said, which is, unfortunately, you know, whether it's a doctor, nurse practitioner, social worker, therapist, and such, you know, they are held to a certain standard, and the expectation is that when you, or even your pharmacist, you know, when you are servicing me or when you are giving me a certain information, that it's the right information. Right. But unfortunately, we don't operate from a learner-centered lens. And so when you go to a pharmacy, they tack onto the bag the information about the drug. Depending on what pharmacy you go to, they're supposed to say, would you like to meet with the pharmacist and go over this?
Yeah.
But a lot of times, can you just put your last 4 numbers of your telephone number in? There's no real conversation around that. But if you don't know, then how are you going to ask? If you don't know that the pharmacist is supposed to meet with you and you in pain, or you just want to get out of there because that line was long, are you going to say, excuse me, don't you supposed to explain this to me? What do we do? Snatch that little ticket off the bag, open the medication, read what we supposed, and take it. And a lot of times, and we take,
and you feel good
and
now?
Guess what? And we take 2 because I'm in that much pain. You understand? And that's where it begins because nobody explains it to us. But then once you take the 2 and it make you feel good, it's like, wait a minute, I want to stay like this. And then some of us have to get back to work.
Right.
Life don't stop lifing.
Right.
And so what we end up doing, when we're supposed to take more, we take less so that we can operate, but then we take more when we get home so we can sleep. And there goes that cycle.
Miss Gayle, I got to tell you, I actually had an emergency surgery a couple of months ago, and they tried to prescribe me a medication when I went home. I won't even touch it. I'm the type of person in recovery. I got to be knocking on death's door to take something like that. Some of the medication they give you is for cancer patients or people who are like severely ill. Why do I need such a high dosage of oxycodone or things of that nature? But then again, I understand everybody's level of pain, is different. But I did want to take it back to when you said how they are responsible about educating people on the drugs that they're giving them. What about people's education level, competency? What if you gave me that bag and I can't read for dirt?
Yep.
So that's what I say. People are responsible for the lives that they're servicing, especially when you're in the medical field.
Yeah.
Right?
And you're supposed to go over it. But I think what happens so often is, only certain people, deserve to be educated around their medication. Only certain people. Addiction doesn't have a face. Addiction doesn't have a name.
Talk.
Everyone is at risk for addiction.
Yes.
And no matter how much money you have, no matter where you live, no matter how well you speak or don't, whether you speak English or don't speak English, everyone is at risk for addiction. And that is going to look different for all of us. You're right. And it's the same thing with food. Depending on how you were raised. If you was raised to a culture where everything circled around food, then that may be your go-to.
Yeah.
But you don't know the limits.
Right.
Same thing with money. If you never had money and now all of a sudden you have money, now there we go with the gambling. There we go with the shopping.
Right.
Because you never had. So it's like, buy. But now I'm to the point where I'm buying so much, I'm compulsive with it. And listen, society fed into that. We learned that during COVID. You have what is Klarna, Affirm, Popo, this one, that one, all kind of ways to take your money every 2 weeks when you even got it.
Was that when it comes to myths on the job, like how do we make sure that our clients are receiving the information they need, and that our coworkers are staying in line so that people are comfortable with really receiving services? Like what type of myths and things do you see yourself possibly correcting your coworkers about? Or I know I'm getting pulled up every other day on my language. The language is changing every other day. We don't say addict anymore. What do we say, Miss Gayle? Substance use
disorder.
Yeah. So it's like, so what are some things that you see yourself facing on the daily on the job?
I think the language is a big one, especially, the population that we're working with. I think language is a big one, and, also the people that we're working with. So we have some people who, maybe they've been, working at Rikers Island or something. So then they're coming in and the language that they're using, may come across as offensive to some people. And I mean, also, it's not even just for the employees though, but also, for our clients and the people we're serving. I think that just, more positive language and just more like supportive language, I think is changing, it's changing how we work with them. It's changing how they see us.
Right.
And I think it's making them feel more comfortable. I feel like a part of, all of the things that we're talking about when it comes to recovery and, getting people not to think certain things, it starts with you when you're working with that person and what you're showing them. And I think it's just like we need constant conversations around things. So, with staff, I think that's something that we're always going to deal with constantly, talking to people about their language constantly. We're humans as well, right? So, I mean, we're all human. I mean, people may come into our job and, think addiction's a choice.
Right.
Even though they're coming to serve people and they probably do genuinely care about people, they still have those same thoughts, So I think that we just have to have constant conversations about the work that we're doing and how we're approaching the work, so that, people are, not really believing those myths.
Yeah. Respects. Trainings, continue to educate, for sure.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
I think that, how do we hold each other accountable? How do we hold our cohorts accountable? How do we hold those in which we serve accountable is by not normalizing the biases, not normalizing the conversations around being judgmental, really meeting people where they're at and being person-centered, allowing, and acknowledging our own biases, our belief systems. Being an African-American woman, when I came up through the ranks of things, we didn't talk about that.
Right.
It was like, that's for them, not us, right? But now we need to have those conversations and acknowledging that we are different. We can look alike and sound alike, but we're not the same. And being able to lean into that and provide me services based around who I am presenting in front of you and not who you think I might be or what you believe or what you heard or what you saw on TV, because that does not define everyone in which we serve.
Yes.
Again, individuals are different.
Yes.
And we come from different communities. We're raised differently. But does that mean because I have an addiction that I should be treated differently? Not at all. Not at all.
Well said, Ms. Gayle. Thank you for that. All right. So we're going to switch the gears just a little bit, since we get to get a little bit of insight and knowledge on addiction. I'd like to talk about recovery. Right? How does addiction and recovery go hand in hand? We want to talk about people in relapse, right? Recovery. Let's talk about how recovery relapse equals recovery. Recovery equals relapse. How it's a possible cycle until people obviously get out of it. How we can possibly have people be a little bit more empathetic, even though we're still going to acknowledge their feelings. People who are suffering from addiction. We hurt a lot of people in our community. So that's what this, what this show is for, to bring it all to the table so everybody gets to have a voice, not just the person suffering, but the people in their families, people, their friends, all of their support. How does everyone get to speak about how they're feeling about addiction? So again, let's talk about recovery and relapse, Ms. Gayle.
So I believe that recovery is healing. And when you speak about recovery, it's not just about the individual who is impacted by the addiction, right? By whatever that looks like for them. Recovery is an individual thing. So my recovery is going to look different than her recovery, and her recovery is going to look different than his. And recovery does not equal sobriety, right? And then when we begin to talk about recovery is not just for the person who takes the drug. It's about the families too. The families need to recover, because, if you change and change me and I work on my recovery, but I go back to an unchanged environment, then where's the recovery? There's no healing process. It has to be a healing process for me, but as well as for my family. Right. Otherwise, when I go home, they're still going to be looking at me with the side eye. Yes. They're still going to be holding their pocketbooks. Yes. They're still going to be pointing their finger and saying, well, I remember when, right? So it has to be a dual process, that recovery. Right. And again, it's going to look different depending on who you are, where you live, your gender, your race, your ethnicity, where you come from, your financial status. Because some people who embark on recovery, if you have money, then there's certain groups and certain things that you can engage in. But then if you don't, and you still live in those very disenfranchised, underserved communities, then that recovery is going to feel different and look different for you.
Yeah, right. Respect. When people are trying to work on their recovery, some people are dealing with shame. Some people are dealing with coming back around their family after possibly hurting them and things of that nature. Sure. How do we work on judgment versus help? How do the people who are on the outside looking in, who have, again, been hurt or just don't understand addiction, so they don't even understand why you just won't quit, or like you said, they may have grown up around addiction, so they're burnt out. They don't have any rap for it at all. How do we start working on judgment versus help? Sasha, I'll start with you.
I was thinking, I'm like, well, that's the hard, because it's a tough one.
Yeah.
And like Ms. Gayle was saying, like the whole family needs to be in recovery. I feel like that's a part of it, including everyone who's close to you or anyone who you feel like, maybe I really damaged that relationship and this is a person I need around, like getting people involved in the process, because I don't know that they would have any other way for them to, have that conversation and be able to understand, and not just completely want to be done with that person. So I feel like, in the recovery process, really getting, the family and the friends involved, because I'm like, how can you do that? I think for me and my work, and being able to work with clients closely, I would be able to, maybe talk to whoever's their collateral contact or someone they're with, because I can ask for that, and I can build that relationship, or, when I'm looking for them, I can call that person and I can have my own conversations, but that's not always the case. So I think, that would have to be, a thing. And also it's, their environment too. So it's like, also, where is that person living? Because I'm saying like get people involved, but also we don't know what their family's involved in. We don't know if maybe they're dealing with their own addiction in some other form, so they just feel like it's not as bad. Right. But yeah, that's a tough one. I was like, getting people to, how do you even get to those people? Right. That's what I'm thinking. How do you even get to those people to be able to get that information across? Right.
Start even having the conversations.
I think this is, we know that recovery is a lifelong process, right? And I think that when we, environment plays a big part. How we grew up, I think back when we used to, when I grew up, music was the thing. So they have music and card parties and fish fries. And, it wasn't out of the norm where, you had your little nips called like Miller Beers or Budweisers. And you thought it was so cute. And go ahead and just taste a little bit. It starts there. Yeah. It's normalizing the conversation around addiction. It's normalizing the conversation. Alcohol is legal. Right. How can you tell somebody they can't drink? Right. When it's legal. Right. When they have your parties. It's just like hookahs. You go to hookah parties now and that's the thing. But we don't understand that, in taking hookahs, we're killing ourselves because it's not healthy. It's not okay. It's not a safer way than smoking.
Right. It's still tobacco.
But the key to it all is education. If we don't educate individuals around substances, around it's something as simple as a cigarette or something as simple as too much food. What is too much food? What does that look like? Everybody said, well, don't eat pork because pork does this. Well, now they're saying that fish glow in the dark. Come on, what's going on? Like, help me out. So I don't understand. So no matter what it is, it's always something. Yeah. But the core of it all is educating individuals around what it looks like so that we don't normalize that conversation around hiding it, around stigma, that it's okay whether you are a black and brown child, whether it's a male or female or whatever the case may be, to get help, to say, listen, this don't make me feel too good. Like she was sharing about the itching and the scratching. If nobody doesn't educate around what comes along with taking this, how do we know what we need to do different? Yeah. and we won't do it different. So we have to education is the core of everything.
Mm-hmm. You know, Ms. Gayle, if people were having more conversations, specifically, I would say about alcohol, because it's such, it's so accepted, right? I think that some of the conversations that I was having with some of my friends and family might have went a little differently. Immediately, you know, when people started recognizing the changes in me, you know, they were making speculations. They couldn't understand what was going on with me, but some people were speculating, you know, Danny, you're an alcoholic. I think you're an alcoholic. That's cool. I'm glad that you told me that. But what are we about to do about that? Because it was never, I think you're an alcoholic. Let's go to a meeting. But that I can't get mad at that because we don't think to do that. We don't think, now with diabetes and cancer, we think, oh, I think you might be sick. Let's go to this physician.
That's right.
We know the next step for that disease.
That's
when
right.
it comes to addiction, we know judgment. We don't too much know help. And I'm not saying that people are even wrong for how they are thinking, because that's all we know, but we don't know the education behind it. You know, we don't know that addiction is, we classify it in the medical as a disease, but on the day-to-day, we don't really see it as a disease, right? So I think it's important that we stress, you know, help versus judgment. You can have an opinion, of course you can have your opinion, but what are the next steps for the person that you're concerned about, right? Yeah. Because we don't want, I'm almost positive that the person who is in their active, deep addiction, they're already feeling shame, right? Yeah. And what comes with shame? Typically isolation, guilt, right? Yeah. And I can, again, speak personally when it comes to shame. With the alcohol has so much sugar in it, and it puts on that weight. When I tell you it puts on that weight, because I did a pretty good job losing some weight, and then I put almost all of it right back on within my 7 years of addiction. Drinking anything that you put in front of me, I would, you know, just so I wouldn't go through withdrawal mainly. But I would say when I started gaining the weight again, and then also I was dealing with some, you know, ruly characters, and I would have like black eyes and things of that nature. So it's like, with the shame of it, how do I come around my family now, almost 75 pounds heavier, with two black eyes? How do I come around with that type of shame? I don't. I isolate.
And that's the piece. That's the piece right there where, you know, when we begin to kind of talk about or talk to individuals that are suffering or struggling with some form of addiction, we need to get the untold story. And when you don't know the untold story, then you just go for, you know what you see, you know. You want, well, you know, if I just what, you know, and then we poke for compliance. Compliance. I want you to do this. I need you to do this. But okay, but do you poke as hard with somebody who said they're diabetic but won't stop eating that piece of chocolate cake? Right. You know, the same grace and space that you give them is the same grace and space you need to give someone who is struggling with some form of recovery. And so when we begin to kind of think about that, we have to say, you know what, nobody wakes up, dangle their legs on the side of the bed and be like, I want to be an addict or have mental health. Right. No, there's a struggle somewhere. Right. You know, if someone gains weight, right? You don't go and say, you need to fit in that size 8. Right. No, we say, go up to the next size. You give grace and space. And so we need to do the same thing when we see someone struggling. We get, what's going on? What's really happening for you? Because those two black eyes, you didn't put them there. You know, you weren't, what's that dog that on the Little Rascals? You wasn't
Spike?
Spike, right?
Spike?
Yeah, you wasn't trying to look like Spike, right? You know what I mean? Something was going on. Yeah. But if mom and them and the family is struggling at home and they can't even talk about it, how are they going to ask you about it? So now they hide it, you hiding it, but you found a way to make yourself, regardless if it's good or not, to make yourself feel better by taking those drinks. You know, and so that's where the struggle lies.
I'll say, Ms. Gayle, Some relationships I wasn't able to repair, but some I was. And whenever we've had those conversations, and, you know, of course, again, not being educated, all they could do is maneuver how they knew how to maneuver. But what I said to them, I'm like, you know, during that time when you noticed the change in me, you knew the real Danny, right? You know me. So at any time, it never clicked to be like something's up. Something has to be going on because Danny don't do this. Yeah. Or, you know, so I'm saying that to people who have loved ones who are still struggling, you know, look at that loved one and remember that's not really them. They don't really do that. Like, you know, don't shy away from them so quickly. Maybe see what's going on with them. And even if you have, again, keeping in mind that they're dealing with a lot of shame that has possibly nothing to do with you. You know, I just spoke about how people's appearance change. You know, how do you come around when people are used to you seeing you one way, and then they're going to notice. Trust me, they're going to tell you. They're going to tell you put on that weight, too.
Yeah, they are.
Yeah, but you know what? I think the other problem to it is when you have substances, because that's what we're talking about, right? And then you have mental health that's with it, right? And so now how do mom, dad, sister, brother, loved one, partner, whomever come to that person? They're not in their right mind already with the alcohol and stuff. Nevertheless, the mental health that's untapped. Right. So how do you come to someone like that and have that conversation and say, you know, you're acting different, you're looking different. And in my head, I believe that you are the one that put me here. Ooh. I believe that you are the one that did that to me. You're the devil. You're the one that I can't talk to, and you're a piece of shit and all that kind of stuff. How can you expect that person to come now and bridge that gap and say, you acting different, you looking different? Right. Because now I don't want to argue.
Right. I
don't want to fight.
Good point, right.
So I think that, again, back to what we all said, it's education. Educating the families on getting the help they need. Educating the, only thing you can do is just keep feeding that person the information. Yeah. When they're ready, they'll be ready. It took you what?
7 years. 7 good years. That's, when you just said when you're ready, I struggle with that piece because although I didn't get sober, I feel like during that time, I call it the darkness. While I was still in the darkness, I was ready. I just couldn't find a door to the light. I literally just thought of that. Like, oh my gosh, I promise you, Miss Gayle, you like we just said, no one wants to be an addict. No one wants that. No one wishes that type of life, wishes for that type of lifestyle. So I'm still working on the words that I would use for the person who's still suffering, because if you're listening, I know you're ready, baby. Like, I know you want to get up out of there.
Yeah, but you could put down a drug but still have the behavior. So are you really ready?
What is the vocabulary for it now? Because I was educated to say addict behavior. What do we say in that regards?
It's still behaviors.
It's behavior, but we don't use the word addict anymore?
No.
Okay.
No, it's the behaviors, because you can put down the drug, which is a substance, but if you still have the behaviors that are manifesting, but now we're realizing that, it's a little bit more than the behaviors. Let's talk about mental health, because we shied away from it and we kept those two so separate. But it's integrated now. That's why they don't call it mental health; they call it behavioral health, because it's an integrated process. And you have to say, well, which one came first, the chicken or the egg?
Right.
We don't know.
Right.
You understand? Because depending on what someone's presenting to you. So that's why you have to, if you present from the lens of education, if I educate you on what all of this looks like and feels like, now you have an opportunity to say, okay, let me take this, let me take a little bit of that, and let me do, it's like making a cake, right? Everyone here, if you say, how you make your cake, how you make your potato salad, everybody have it different. And then you turn your back like this and you sprinkle something. You say, what you put in there? That's my secret. That's mine, right? And so everyone has that way of how they going to get there. It looks different for each and every one of us. You understand? And it looked different for you. So maybe we have to put down that and then work on the behavior. Because let's be honest, when we're in our addiction, let's focus on substances now, right? Whether it be pills or alcohol or crack or cocaine, right? We do a lot for that. We do a lot for
Yes,
it,
ma'am.
you know, and it looks different for everyone, depending on what those pockets.
Yeah, right.
But if change is strange and money's funny, you doing some things that you're not so happy about, the behaviors
Right.
that lead to the usage.
Right.
So I might stop using, but I still got those them behaviors, and these are the things that we got to talk about,
Right.
And we have to inform.
Right. Very well said. Thank you. During the course of a person's addiction, like maybe when it's first starting, what does unmanageable look like? What does that look like in the beginning as it begins to fester? Like things around jobs. We were just talking about finances, money funny, housing, health. What does unmanageable look like? What does a person's life becoming unmanageable look like? What are some signs that we could possibly start noticing to check in on our friend and loved one a little bit more?
I think it depends on, on the person. I think that once someone, and even if it's someone you don't know that well, I feel like once someone is not, doing the basic things, or like, the things that they normally do daily, if there's anything that you can notice, even if it's like, for example, a coworker, you may not know them that well, but you see them every day, and you know that John gets to work every day at 7:30 now, and he's always well dressed, and now you're noticing that John's coming in at 8 o'clock and he's looking a little disheveled. I think once you really start to notice different changes in people, and now people that well, I feel like once they're not showing up to their job, or they're maybe going through some money problems, or just major things that are different. It doesn't necessarily have to be negative either, but just very different.
Yeah, different. Yeah,
I agree. I think that how someone is showing up, and that showing up is going to look different for everyone. When you see someone, they never came to family functions. Now they showing up all the time. Red flag. Someone who showed up to every family function, now they're not. Red flag. I think that, when individuals they're a social butterfly and they're outgoing, now all of a sudden they're so bitter, they're so angry, they're snapping at people. Language matters. Listen to the words that people say. And so when you start hearing people say, I don't even give a shit. I don't even care if I'm here anymore, or I don't want to be, I just, I'm just nothing. It's you listen, so sometimes it's not just the action, but it's the words, how people look. Somebody say, girl, what's the matter with you? And you sleeping all day, all the time. You ain't that much tired in the world, right? You ain't Rip Van Winkle. Like, get up, right? Get up. And so it's different ways and different things that you can see, and that your friends, your loved ones, even if you don't know your coworkers, right? That gentleman who showed up and always together, and now he comes and it's like, where's that cologne? I'm used to hearing, smelling you. You know what I mean? Something's wrong.
And let's be comfortable with doing that. Like, right? I had a coworker tell me, right before I went out, I got really sick from alcohol. And he said, when I came back, I was out of work for 3 months. I almost lost my life to the bottle. And he said, when I came back, he's like, I knew something, but I wasn't comfortable. I don't know you like that. We work around each other, but he's like, I knew something was wrong. And I was like, and at that time I might have been about like maybe 5 or 6 months sober. And I said, bro, even if a person get mad at you, you know your heart. And if you feel like you want to reach out, let them get mad.
Yeah.
It's not like you sitting there talking about them behind their back. That's when it's wrong, when you whisper and it's sniggling and giggling. But if you go straight to that person, hey sis, I noticed X, Y, and Z.
Yep.
Let them take it how they take it. But you did your due diligence, right? And
Sure.
Like you said, having the conversations, making it more comfortable to just have
or leave a note.
talk about.
Leave a note somewhere. You know, the same way that we would tell a friend, a family member, a coworker that their breath stink, right? Because you don't want to go, listen, girl, you know, on that, sometimes it's like, did you not stop by the bathroom this morning? Like, what's going on? What's happening? You need some Colgate, something, right? The same way we would tell them, write a little note, leave it on their desk. It's the same way we say, is something wrong? And nowadays, we have so many other options. We have so many other resources that's available. You know, hotlines that we can call. There's so many different services that we can, you know, provide as an intervention for people, especially on the jobs. But even at home, you know, I had a woman, she's 70-something years old, call me. I don't know how she got my number, but she called and she was in tears, And she said, you know, I'm retired and I should be living my best life. She said, but I'm in a motel, not even hotel. I'm in a motel right now. And my son, who's 50-something, is at my house. And I'm afraid to go home. I'm afraid to go home. And her son has mental health, but he also abuses substances. And she says, I don't know what to do. I don't know where to turn. And she said now, and we was on the phone, I don't know this woman from a hole in the wall. But she said, if somebody would have told me when he was 7, she's thinking back now. She said, if somebody would have told me when he was 13, when he was 14, you know, the stuff that he was doing, the drinking, the smoking and stuff, that I could have got help then. But now, I don't know. Like, I'm because if I call somebody to the house, they're going to kill him.
Yeah, right.
Because he's out of control. She was like, so what am I supposed to do?
Right.
Wow.
That's deep. That's deep. I've never even thought about it like calling for help, and then you actually end up hurting one of your loved ones. I know my mom has had to call the cops more than once. Back home, it's called being 302 when you're put into a psych ward. You know, that alcohol, it just makes your brain just literally. It's called the store is called Wine and Spirits for a reason. It brings them spirits up out of you, and you know. That's actually a good way for us to go into this next section where we're talking about the brain and addiction, what addiction does to the brain. Can we talk on that briefly, Ms. Gayle? Yeah.
So addiction, whether it's alcohol or whether it's pills or any kind of substance, it impacts the brain. You know, a lot of times your memory, your frontal cortex, that part of your brain, it makes people, depending on the drugs that you use, it can make people disconnect. It can make people, you know, have no emotional intelligence, no kind of, you're like, what is the matter with you? Why are you so mean? Once they start drinking. You have some people who come very, very violent when they drink. Some people come extremely nice when they drink. But the bottom line is it impacts your memory. And so after you become sober, you start to see it. And, you know, they're doing studies now, right? We don't have the numbers in front of us, but they're doing studies where they relate substance use and abuse to dementia, to Alzheimer's.
I would definitely not be surprised if that is completely a correlation. I mean, how often with the blackouts, you know, that's your memory, right there, and also the way that alcohol and substances affect the brain with impulse control, risky behaviors, indulging in sexual activities that you probably wouldn't typically, just high risk behaviors. These substances make you think that you're somebody you're not.
Invincible.
You could do anything, you know, especially if you've been on a binge. And again, a blackout where you just don't remember. So of course I can see how it could be related to dementia. You know, it's messing with your brain cells. So, ladies, this has been phenomenal. Before we wrap up, though, I do want to give a little bit of hope for the people. You know, like there's a lot of people who do have community support or have family support, but then there's some people who don't have any support at all. For the people with family support, we want to just continue to encourage them to lean on them and continue to educate the people who are being affected by the person who is suffering from addiction. But for the person also who doesn't have any support, we want to make sure that they know that they're not alone. So what resources do we have for them? Like AA, NA, things of that nature.
Oh yeah, there are all kind of resources that's available, and now more than ever, you can go online, and so you don't have to leave the comfort of your home. There's no excuses.
Right.
Oh, I need to find somewhere.
Right.
Some people say, well, I don't have the electronics, or I don't have, but you can just, the same way we go to YouTube and TikTok, is the same day we could just Google NAAA, and you can make a meeting 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.
Tell them, Ms. Gayle.
Yeah, it's 2:00 in the morning. I took a gentleman online, dropped him right in there to that Zoom. It was 148 people on that call.
Wow.
From New Zealand, Australia,
Yes.
and I left him there. I said, good luck,
Right.
And so and even if you say that you don't have money, this is for New York in particular, but all in all states they have either sliding scale or free resources. But right now, Lehman Counseling Services, which is in the Bronx and it's attached to Lehman College, they have free counseling and they do telehealth. All you have to do is call.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice.
And then all else fails, if you have nowhere else to go to 988. Dial 988.
All right.
988.
All right. And when it comes to recovery, we want to stress the fact that everybody's recovery is different.
That's right.
As we said it a million times, everybody is different. So, of course, their recovery is going to be different. What worked for me may or may not work for the next man. But doesn't mean we can't talk about what we've been through, because it might help the next man, right?
That's right.
So when it comes to your recovery, make sure that you're taking it personal and reaching out to some of these resources that we were just discussing. And we're going to close it out with some final thoughts from you ladies.
I'm glad that we talked about this. I'm glad that I was here. I'm glad we had this conversation. My final thoughts right now are just, to really be mindful every day in the work that I do. And even in my personal relationships, even if it's someone I don't know that well, but just being mindful, because a lot of people don't have that support or don't have that person who is going to say something. So I'm just, what I'm taking away from tonight is just, making sure that I'm practicing what I'm preaching. And that, I'm paying attention, because me paying attention might save someone's life.
Yeah. Respect.
And just to piggyback on that, be intentional. Even if you relapse, that doesn't end your progress. That just informs the next phase of your recovery.
Respect.
And so it's important that we realize that, we recognize that, and we continue to do something just one day at a time.
What is it? How many? What is it? One day?
One day.
One day. Just one?
One day.
You sure?
Not even one day, 12 hours.
Listen,
6 hours.
because you could stay in the moment. We could stay in the moment.
In a minute.
When I tell you
Yes.
that is the phrase that I feel like, of course, I give all praises due to the Most High God, Yahweh, for saving me. But there was a doctor who said those words to me when I was in the ICU. He said, a day at a time. And I had heard that at an AA meeting before, but it was just something about the way that doctor said that to me. I knew I had a fighting chance. And Ms. Gayle, I appreciate you for saying that just now, because I think it's important to stay in the moment, because some people who are even thinking about putting the bottle down or putting the substance down, they're like, oh my gosh, I can't do it for the rest of my life. I can't use ever again for the rest of, girl, please, just, can you get through the day?
There you go.
Let's just do it for just today. Even the moment, right?
Yep.
I love staying in the moment. And with that, we're going to wrap up our first episode. Again, ladies, thank you so much for being here. You don't know what this means to me and to the person who is still suffering that's listening in.
Absolutely.
All right?
Yep.
Until next time.
Bye.